session Mr. Raju Kanukula, and he is a research officer currently in the Monash University, Melbourne. And also the good part is he's a member of a RobMe tool currently, which is under development. There's a risk of bias due to missing evidence. I think one of the important tool they are coming out with, where we can try to understand, is there any bias we are going to be have if you miss any evidence, missing evidence. So that's what I think they're going to be work on. It's going to be very good if it comes out soon. And his education, he completed his master in pharmacy practice from Naipur Mohali. And his research areas of interest are improving the quality of systematic reviews, evidence synthesis in the areas of cardiovascular as well as in the nutrition research. And he personally involved in conducting many systematic reviews and meta-analysis and published papers as well. And he's having a good understanding about all the process of systematic review. But I certainly considered him for this. I requested him to have a session on especially this data extraction and quality assessment, because in the Australia, he's particularly involved in this aspect, data extraction and quality assessment. I felt he may be the right person to explain and maybe demonstrate us how we need to perform the data extraction and the quality assessment. So with this, I welcome Raju for taking over the session and demonstrate the two aspects of data extraction and the quality assessment.
Thank you, Dr. Krishna. Thank you for introducing me to the audience. So shall I start?
Yeah, please share your screen so that I could keep it in live.
Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead, Mr. Raj.
Yeah,
it is visible. Yeah.
So I hope you all are enjoying the session since morning and learning about what are systematic reviews and how they can be conducted and what are the steps involved in this. So in this session, we are going to discuss about the two key stages of systematic reviews, and those are data extraction and quality assessment. So these are the key steps in this systematic review. So here, once you finalize your included studies based on the pre-specified eligibility criteria, the next step is simultaneously extracting data as well as assessing the quality of the included studies. So in this stage also, sometimes we exclude, even when I'm doing in my early stages, and I excluded some studies because of data insufficiency or inappropriate reporting of data and based on poor quality. But that should not be done according to the Cochrane. So if you read the Cochrane handbook, it will say so you should not exclude the studies based on the quality. If that is a poor quality, you should include it, but you have to address it by saying, so this is the impact of the poor quality study on the effect estimate that we have obtained while doing the meta-analysis. And similarly, when we are collecting data, so if we find something, if there is a mean we want, but the included study reported mode or median, and we are not interested in taking that because we don't know how to capture that, how to convert the data into the mean, and again standard deviation, how to obtain from the interquartile values and ranges. So here we now, if you look at the Cochrane handbook, and it is giving us some guidance how to capture them, how to calculate those data. So the basic steps involved are from defining sales strategy to knowledge translation. So these stages I'm dealing now are data collection and study quality assessment. So now coming to the data extraction. So what is data collection process? So it is a process of extracting the essential information that is required to analyze qualitatively or qualitatively to address the pre-specified research questions through meta-analysis or through narratively. So here for developing data extraction sheet, so review authors should plan in advance and pre-specify in a protocol what data they are going to collect, and they have to develop a strategy how they are going to obtain that, and they have to pre-specify what are the decision rules that they are going to frame while extracting data. So when extracting data, so review authors have to include all the review authors in the team, so there should be data collectors, there should be senior researchers, there should be content experts, and there should be biostatisticians who are going to analyze that data. Next, resolving the conflicts. Once you extract data, so this data extraction can be conducted by 2 independent reviewers to minimize the bias, to minimize the errors that we are going to face after extracting the data. So here there are conflicts can be resolved by sitting and discussing and where the issues are occurring and how we can handle those. If we are unable to, if 2 independent reviewers are unable to resolve those conflicts, so they can contact the senior researchers. If this senior researcher also unable to address that conflict, they have to write the author of the paper, so that when you get the correct information from the study author, you can take a decision whether which value to input. Next, after collecting all the data, you have to clean the data set. So which we can do for the data, which we can help for the analyze the data into the meta-analysis softwares like CMA, RevMan, and we can also store this data and for sharing purpose with the journals or with other researchers whomsoever requesting us for future purpose. So data extraction, it involves the describing the study characteristics of the included studies, describing the outcomes, and describing the risk of bias, and how we are going to conduct the meta-analysis. So developing data collection forms have these components basically. So study methods. Study methods means whether the included study is a randomized controlled trial or case control or cohort, and how the randomization occurred and how the cases were captured, how the controls were captured, and where those study was conducted. Next, participants. So participants related to their age, their gender, and their condition. Next, intervention. Intervention related to the dose, drug name, dosage form, and how many times the drug was given and how long it was given. Next, outcomes. So these outcomes and result section, which are the key components. So this can be conducted definitely by 2 independent reviewers to minimize the bias, at attrition, to minimize the bias at missing evidence, to minimize the reporting error issues. So outcomes. So the elements of the outcomes are these. If you look at these things, outcome domain are titled first. So here I'm going to take an example of blood pressure. So here it is a systolic blood pressure. However, next, measurement or tool. So measurement tool or instrument. Here I'm going to capture this sphygmomanometer, but here I'm giving you the example of VAS because we do not need to specify sphygmomanometer here. For VAS, if you define, so what is severe pain and what is mild pain, so you have to give the certain range, whatever the review authors, whatever the study author specified. You have to capture that in the data collection form that you are going to develop. Next, specify metric. The metric means here the data that we are going to capture, whether that is belong to the post-intervention or change in score from the baseline, or post-intervention or presence of high BP, yes or no. So this data you have to capture. So all these values, those will be presented in the published papers, which are included actually in our systematic review. So we have to form a decision rule, which data we are interested in, whether we are interested in change in score from baseline or post-intervention. Next, method of aggregation. So here SBP is a continuous data, continuous outcome. So we are going to take as mean standard deviation. And we can sometimes take it as a binary data as well. If we say, if we have SBP less than 140 and we consider them as customer intervention intervention acted very well in those patients. Next, timing of the outcome. So timing of the outcome is from baseline to 4 weeks or baseline to 8 weeks or baseline to the 12 weeks. So this data that will be presented in the form of tables, in the form of figures, in the included studies. So which we are going to collect, whether we are interested in baseline to 8 weeks or baseline to 4 weeks. So we are going to specify that, and we are going to mention that in the data collection form. So as we discussed the framing decision rules for outcome. So now we are going to deal with the source of data. So most of the time we are going to capture data from journal articles, conference abstracts. It is very rare, and cross-checking the trial registries and erratums. So erratums are basically these are being published in recent times, almost since 5 to 6 years. Once the system, once an RCT published, if there are any errors in reporting, if there are any mistakes, so the same authors will publish that with the corrected values. So we have to cross check whether the general article, the included article has any erratums. So, but we should not exclude these erratums when we are capturing the when we are screening those studies. Next, regulatory reviews. So these can be obtained from the FDA, HMA, or MHRA. It is very rare obtaining this kind of information from the regulatory reviews. IPD individual patient data. This is mostly with pharmaceutical companies. It is rare getting access to that kind of data. Next, requesting CSR clinical study reports. It is also with the pharmaceutical companies as well as with FDA, HMA, or EMA. Next, corresponding with investigators. So whenever we are having any issues, as we discussed previously, whenever we are having any issues or whenever we are having any missing information in that paper and we are interested in that data, so we can write to them to get the appropriate information. So now coming to the data extraction issues. So types of data, first we have to deal with what types of data. We need to understand what kind of data we are going to deal. So whether it is dichotomous data or binary data, which means where each individual's outcome data one of only two possible categorical responses, either yes or no, dead or alive. Next, continuous data, where each individual's outcome is a measurement of numerical quantity, like we said, SBP or DBP, so or VAS score, visual analysis scale score. So these are continuous. Next, ordinal data. So when we are assessing some outcomes based on the quality of life assessment, quality of life scales. So the outcome will be categorized into severely affected, moderately affected, mildly affected. So this is a category. So this is called as an ordinary data. Next, counts and rates. From this can be calculated from counting the number of events that each individual experiences. For example, any adverse events or headache events. So this data we have to take, and sometimes we have to present it as a number percentages. So here we have tools to extract data. Sorry, I'm going back. So institution handling data extraction. If you are doing any systematic review and you are getting nanograms per millimole, but you are interested in nanograms per deciliter. So you have to convert that data. So there are online tools, you can convert that to make it the standard data. Next, computations. If there is any standard error reported instead of standard deviation in a particular paper, but other papers reported only mean and standard deviation, but this particular paper reported as mean and standard error, you have to calculate that. So there are formulas. I will show you in my next slides. Next, buried data. Buried data means here you have access to the full paper, but you are unable to get the data, the required data in that paper. So you have to cross check whether if this study has any supplementary files or not. So if there is any supplementary files, you have to go back and cross check and find the relevant data. Next, qualitative data. So you are interested in SBP now. This SBP it should be mentioned in mean standard deviations from say baseline to end of the study, but it is just mentioned and at the end of the study, this treatment showed SBP reduction more in control group than intervention. So there is no numerical data. This is only reported narratively, but you should not exclude that. You should capture that, and we are going to deal this kind of thing in RobMe tool. Next, figures. So sometimes data also reported in figures. I will demonstrate in one figure how we are going to capture that. There are some tools again to extract data. So normally there are many tools available for extracting data. So generally in India, even in other developing nations, so we are using only Excel sheets and Google spreadsheets to collect data from the individual papers for doing our systematic reviews. But there are some other automated, semi-automated, not automated exactly, but semi-automated tools are there, and there are particular software and tools available here. For example, JB, Jonah Breaks, they have a particular software for that data extraction as well as data analysis. Next, Covidence. So this is also one of the best tool, and which is paid version. We have to pay, I think, monthly basis. We have to pay subscription to collect data, to handle the data collection, to handle the screening process, to handle the data analysis. Similarly, the Digital SR is also a paid version. RedCap. So RedCap is compared to those Covidence and Digital SR a bit cheaper to say. So you can extract data from extract data in RedCap as well. Next, AP Reviewer, which is sponsored by again Cochrane. So, but we have to pay some money for that. Next, systematic data review data repository. So these are some of the tools. There are many tools available. If you are interested in other tools, you can go to the SR toolbox. There you will find more information about these kind of tools for study selection, screening, data extraction, quality assessment, text mining, data analysis. So data from plots or figures. So as I mentioned, there are some software. So here, Engage Digitalizer, Plot Digitalizer, next Web Plot Digitalizer. Here it is, I'm showing, this is a Web Plot Digitalizer. This is a sample that I have taken after conducting the this process. So if you see, I'm interested in seeing the casein and water. So what is the body weight change? So if you calibrate first this plot or this figure, then you can see in the acquired data, bar 1 represents 0.98, which is body weight only 0.98 change from baseline to I think 4 weeks or 8 weeks here. Next, it is having 95% confidence intervals. This bar 2 and bar 1 it is representing. Similarly, in case in bar 3 is mean, and bar 4 and bar 5 are 95% confidence intervals. So this data you can export into the Excel sheet, and you can again adjust the decimals and report it in your data extraction sheet. Next, coming to the reporting issues with results. Now reporting issues are divided into here in 2 slides. One is in intervention studies, and next slide is going to deal with observation studies. As we discussed in my previous slides, the first example here I'm going to give is reporting of only final values or end of the study data, but we are interested in change from the baseline, but this data is not there, and how we are going to collect that. So I'm going to give you one example here. Sometimes you can mention the final values directly in your meta-analysis, but you have to again run the sensitivity analysis and show whether this value affected your summary estimate or not. Next, reporting only baseline and end of the study data. So here your interest is changed from baseline. So to capture that, and here there is a SD change calculator we have developed at Cochrane. So this is giving some information here. The SDs we need to from change from the baseline to end of the study to get the value. You have to subtract end of the study value minus baseline, but the SD to capture, so we have to enter baseline SD and intervention, baseline SD in a comparator group, as well as end of the study for both groups. Then it will calculate and it will give you. So these highlighted ones are the SDs that we are going to obtain and we are going to input. Next, if only confidence intervals are reported, mean and confidence intervals are reported, but we are interested in mean and SD. So to capture that, there is a formula SD equal to square root of n into upper limit minus lower limit by 3.92. So if that is 95% confidence interval, we have to use 3.92 here. If that is 90%, 3.29 we have to use. Next, if there is SD, if there is mean and SE, you have to capture SE and multiply it with the square root of sample size, so that you can get the standard deviation, which is the most common form for meta-analyzing along with the mean. If if only mean and p-values reported, but there is no 95% confidence intervals and there is no SE, but we are interested in getting SD. So to get SE first, we have to calculate intervention effect estimate. If mean is minus 1.52, that can be divided by the Z. That means here the p-value you have to see in the normal distribution table. What is the value for? If the p-value is 0.52, and in Z table you can go there and see, you can find a value. So after dividing with that value, you can get standard error. Again, from the standard error, you can calculate the standard deviation. Next, median and interquartile range. So here I'm giving you one example here. The sample size is 12. The median of the sample is 16, and lower end of the range is 12, and upper end is again 22. So if you calculate it, it is going to give you 16.5. That is the mean that you are going to obtain and you are going to keep in your data collection form. And here it is giving the variance as well, but we are interested in only standard deviation. So 16.5 is our mean and 2.88 is our standard deviation. So these calculations will be helpful converting and computing the p-values, 95% confidence intervals, and standard errors. Next, issues in observation studies. Here in observation studies, most of the time we are going to see what is the effect of an exposure. For example, if exposure is measured as a continuous variable, we are going to obtain only one summary estimate. I'll give you one example in the next slide. If exposure is a categorical variable, for example, if yes or no, dead or alive, there are two arms or two groups, it is going to give you two estimates. If your exposure measured as a tertiles, quartiles, quintiles, low to medium, medium to high, then there are multiple effects that you are going to obtain. And sometimes in observation studies, you are going to see different models, model 1, model 2, model 3, so and so. They'll mention different models for only those events and sample size for both groups. But which model we have to extract, that we should define in our decision rules first. So this is the example. For example, here we are going to see the diet quality score on our 10-year mortality. So that is Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. It is increasing order, but here it is one continuous. So one is measured as a continuous. So here you have to, when you are going to collect data of continuous data, then you have to capture 0.87, not 0.70 or 0.79, 0.86. Next, when you are going to collect data from model 1 or 2 or 3, when you define that, and if you have model 1, if you are interested in model 1, but that you have to cross check whether that is adjusted for more variables or less variables. Sometimes model 3 is adjusted for less variables, sometimes model 1 is adjusted for the more variables. So for that you have to always cross check the legends of the table whether which model is appropriate to include in our meta-analysis. And next, as I mentioned, there are two instances. You are comparing high versus low. So you have to capture data from the high one, not from the lower one, which is actually considered as a reference standard always. So here, if you see, this is the reference. So they mentioned very clearly it is reference 1.0. So these values again adjusted for age and area adjusted, and another one is multivariable adjusted. So basically, we have to take the data which is adjusted for more variables. 0.96 we have to capture here. If Q1 is lower value and Q3 is the higher value, Q5 is the higher value, but the data reported in different way, then we have to this HR 0.96 we have to invert it by 1 by 0.96. So that is what inversion that we can do to get the desired estimate, because we are interested in low versus high versus low, but the data reported is it's different. Similarly, 0.75 again 1 by 0.75, but that becomes upper confidence interval. 1.23 again 1 by 1.23 becomes the lower confidence interval. So this is called odds ratios or hazard ratios inversions. So these can be helpful when the data when in a particular study the data reported in different way, in opposite way. Next, quality assessment. I think I'll demonstrate the data extraction I have done for one RCT. So my study name is RE 2017.
Mr. Raju, I think it is not visible.
Okay.
You can stop screen share and then share once again.
So I think, can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a study RE 2017. So I denoted this with PDF number, because whenever we are dealing with multiple studies and a huge number of included studies, then we have to give a number along with the study title. So the included study is a double-blind parallel group study. I think I have to show my. So how could I show here, Krishna, simultaneously from where I have collected data from that particular study?
I think no, two windows cannot open simultaneously. You can just explain with this Excel sheet. Fine, I think it will be fine.
Okay, after that I will open that republished study. It's a PDF form. So I highlighted there. I'll just.
Yes. Otherwise, maybe you can do in reverse. Maybe you can show the article first with the highlights, and then you can
Okay.
come back and show in the Excel sheet.
Okay, I'll do that. Okay, this is the title of my study, Efficacy and Safety of Co-administration of Fimasatin and Rosuvastatin to
It is not
participants with
shared, Raju. Yes, we are getting now.
Okay, this is the title. As I mentioned, this is the randomized double-blind parallel group trial. So you can highlight here. So next, as we mentioned, we need to capture the participant information. It is a P. So patients with age 20 to 75 with hypertension and the definition of that hypertension and any comorbidities. Here the patients are having dyslipidemia. So and the definition of that as well we are going to capture. So it's about the participants. Next interventions we are going to capture. So here the information for the participant for the intervention. Fimasatin 120 mg, rosuvastatin 20 mg. This is a fixed dose combination, and fimasatin 120 mg. It's single again. Rosuvastatin 20 mg. This is also single dose. This is about the intervention. And coming to the outcomes, the baseline characteristics: age of the total participants, gender, the men percentage, next their body mass index, next baseline systolic, baseline diastolic values, baseline LDL values here. So these values we are going to capture. Next, total how many patients were assigned. The total sample size is 140. Now coming to how that outcome was measured, it is sitting. Next, as we said, this systematic review is interested in knowing the change in SBP score from baseline to 8 weeks. So this is a fixed FDC group, and this is the single group of fimasatin and rosuvastatin. So these are given alone. So this is the value that we are getting, minus 20.47 with the standard deviation. Whether we have to cross check whether this 15.60 is the standard deviation or something else, we have to see. Here you can see it is a standard deviation. Next, fimasatin the same way. So for these three groups, we have to capture these three values. Similarly for diabetes, for DBP, for LDL, and if we are interested in safety data also, we can capture this from this text, and also a table we are having in the bottom. And if we are interested in total cholesterol also, we can capture this for triglycerides. So this is the data, and here you are having 95% confidence intervals as well. So from this data also you can capture SD. This 5.7 is standard error. If you see, this is a standard error, but we are interested in standard deviations. So either you capture you calculate standard deviation from 5.79 or this 95% confidence interval. So I captured in two ways. So I'll explain you in the Excel sheet. So how I captured that. Okay, now I'm taking you to the spreadsheet, and I'm going to demonstrate first what is my objectives and what are the eligibility criteria. So if you see the review objective to assess the effects of co-administered antihypertensive agents and statins and blood pressure. So here blood pressure may be SBP or DBP. The eligibility criteria adults with or without hypertension and or hyperlipidemia. So just now you have seen the patients are with hypertension. They have defined what is hypertension and hyperlipidemia. What is the definition of hyperlipidemia and interventions are fixed dose combination of antihypertensive agents alone or standard statin alone or both drugs together. Comparator compared all drugs each other. Maybe FDC versus statin, FDC versus again antihypertensive agent. Next, the outcomes are change in SBP, change in TVP, LDL-C values, SDL values, total cholesterol values. So in the tables just now you saw, so we are having all this information in that tables and somewhere in text as well for safety. And the study designs we are interested in are randomized double-blind trials. So we are having that this trial is meeting the criteria. Next, time points here, any study that is conducted for more than 4 weeks. So changing from baseline, if a study conducted less than 4 weeks, so that can be excluded. But here this study meeting our criteria, which is having almost 8 weeks of duration. So that is where this study included in our study, and we are going to see how I capture. So I abbreviated it double-blind parallel group study. The country is South Korea. I mentioned hypertension, dyslipidemia, the age in the table. I got that values from the table. Next, BMI. These values are also presented for the whole group, not for individual groups. Next, sample size is 140. In the result section, we can see that 140. Next, males percentage, baseline SBP, baseline DBP. So how this was measured, how this baby was measured. So it is sitting, and the BP measured at peak or trough. It was not mentioned in the paper. If you read, when we get no information, we can mention that it is not reported. Similarly, baseline LDL, baseline total cholesterol. Next, coming to the intervention details. So interventions are fimostatin 120 versus rosuvastatin 20 versus both together. Here both means it is an FDC. Next, duration of the treatment was 8 weeks. So number of follow-ups. Here it is only one follow-up. Similarly, this RCTs generally have multiple follow-ups. Baseline to 4 weeks, baseline to 6 weeks again. 4, 6, 8, 12. So like that, there could be multiple follow-ups. But here in this study, we have only one follow-up, baseline to 8 weeks. And what are the outcomes that this study reported? This study reported SBP, DBP, whichever we are interested in, it is having the values related to the outcomes. So we can capture those. Next, whether the intervention is FDC or not. So that we are going to capture. So what is the drug 1? What is the name of the drug we are capturing here? What is the class of the drug? So by capturing this class of the drug, so we can do some subgroup analysis based on the class. If ARBs are more, if there are 3 to 4 ARBs and 2 to 3 calcineurin blockers, so we can do subgroup analysis and we can see which class of drugs are acting better for reducing the SBP. So we can see that. Next, dose of the drug, administration, for how long it was administered, and how many patients were randomized for that group. So next group is like rosuvastatin, next group is a FDC. Now coming to the outcome related information. So here, as we defined change in SBP at the end of the study. So this is the value that we are going to obtain from the tables, minus 16.7 and 16.5. This is an SD, and this is the sample size at the end of the study, 45. But initially it was I think 47. Now it is 45. Because it is followed ITT method. It is not followed PP per protocol. Next, change in SBP in another group, change in SBP in again FDC group. Okay, similarly, change in DBP. So this is about BP outcome data. Now coming to the cholesterol values. So LDL. So as I said, I'll explain you how we captured from standard error. So I applied that formula here. This 1.92 was standard error in the table I captured, and this is the sample size. So I applied that formula square root of n. So I'm getting this 12.88. Again, from 95% confidence intervals, if you see the square root of sample size into upper confidence interval minus lower confidence interval by 3.92. If we apply that formula, so we are going to get minus 13.1. Similarly, we have to capture for triglycerides, SDL values. And for safety also, I captured one treatment related adverse event. So this was mentioned in the table, I think 6. So if you see for ASTD group, there are only 3 events, and for treatment related adverse events for starting group only 5, and for FDC 4. If you see the sample sizes for these values, these 46, 45, and 48, you have to see in the flow chart. So there they will they'll give how many patients were remained at the end. So those values we have to keep here. So this is about data collection from an RCT. So this the backend work I have done from baseline to change by the end of the study. This is here. This is the baseline value. This is the follow-up value, 134.63. That means there is some reduction, but how much? It is 16.67. These values we have actually captured. We have actually kept in this form. The 16.7. So here it is. That was round off value 16.67 becomes 16.7 there. And similarly, SD that is computed again from SD calculator provided by the Cochrane group. So these values again same in the same way I captured. This minus this. This minus this. This is going to give minus 4.5. These change in SBP values are presented here. So now I'm going to discuss about quality assessment. So since 2-3 decades, these systematic reviews have been playing key role in informing the healthcare decisions and also from framing the policies and also developing clinical practice guidelines for various diseases such as cardiovascular, diabetes, cancers. If you look at the evidence ladder, systematic reviews of RCTs sits on the top. As I think in previous sessions you have seen the evidence ladder. So these are systematic reviews sitting on the top, which are well conducted, which are able to inform the healthcare decisions. However, to strengthen these systematic review procedures, methods, these Cochrane, Campbell, JBI, other evidence synthesis networks are trying their best to make these systematic reviews with high quality without any risk of bias. So to develop that, they are coming up with the new tools, checklist, but still there are some concerns are raising at each step. So in quality assessment also there are some issues are raising every time. For example, recently we identified that multiplicity and the selective non-reporting of outcomes. So these things are being addressed now. But for now, I'm going to discuss only the basic risk of bias tool as well as Newcastle-Ottawa scale here for observation studies. I'll demonstrate with one cohort study here for observational studies and risk of bias tool for one RCT. So for assessing the risk of bias, there have been plenty of scales available, such as JEDAD, which is the old version, which is the oldest scale developed for assessing the quality. And after that, Cochrane introduced the risk of bias tool, which is also implemented in RevMan, which is a software for managing Cochrane reviews. Next, CASP checklist. Oxford also providing critical appraisal tools for RCTs, diagnostic reviews, and prognostic studies. And JBI also. JBI is here in Australia. They are also providing checklist for case control, cohort, case series. So now there are some checklists also available to address the reporting quality. So Prisma checklist, Moose, and Strobe. Concert. These checklists have been there to address the reporting quality of included studies. So recently, Cochrane team also developed a ROB2, which is a risk of bias 2, which is different from the risk of bias, which is in the RevMan. So which is actually everybody is still using, but this ROB2 is very advanced, which is having many items which are covering almost all selection bias to other biases, whichever that we have missed in risk of bias 1. And again, they are also working on Robins 2, which is Robin 1 already available, so we are using currently. All the researchers are able to use that now. However, they are developing Robin 2 now. So here are some of the examples for randomized control trials. I think I discussed these things. For observation studies also, we have these things. For now, if you look at, we are going to assess the quality of systematic reviews also. So those systematic reviews already published, and they are being used for informing the decisions, and they are going to be included in the making the recommendations in the clinical practice guidelines, but they are lacking some they are having some issues in terms of the risk of bias. So ROBIS is a tool which is developed by Penny Whiting and Julian Higgins. So that's, they introduced it in 2015. So this is trying to show that the systematic reviews that have been published since almost 2010 to 2020, there is almost 80% of the systematic reviews are with a high risk of bias. And AMSTER 2, which is to assess the methodological quality of the systematic reviews. AMSTER 1 was introduced in 2007 and AMSTER 2 was introduced in 2017. So these two tools have been able to address these methodological issues in systematic reviews. Next, ROBME, which is currently in development. So we are going to deal with risk of bias due to missing evidence because of the unreporting of the outcomes and our non-selection of the studies, which are actually should be included in the systematic review. So those things we are going to deal. So reporting checklist, I think we discussed these things. So actually, this is a template from I captured from our Cochrane handbook. So which is the recent? This is the oldest version. This is not the recent one. So the bias in terms of in randomized control trials are different. The various types. So these are the main types we are going to deal in risk of bias tool in RevMan as well as in the recent version. There are some additions or deletions for this biases in the recent one. So I'll explain what is selection bias. So whenever you're going to select the cases, whenever you're going to collect the participants into the intervention group and control group, so there should be some random sequence generation through the randomization process that should be done. But if there is any inappropriate conduction of that process, so that leads to the selection of bias. And next, performance bias. If there is any systematic differences between groups, in the care. For example, if you know that person is your friend or your family member, so the study personnel going to definitely give an intervention which is actually working better than the testing drug. So that introduces performance bias of the patient, and the outcomes that we are going to obtain from that patient will definitely differ. Next, detection bias, systematic difference between the groups in outcomes, how outcomes are determined. So that can be overcome by blinding of outcome assessment. Here, outcome assessor can be blinded, or sometimes the statistician can be blinded to stop if there is any inappropriate data handling. So that can be handled by blinding the process, by blinding the outcome assessor or statistician. Next, attrition bias. If in two groups, in one group 10 patients are being withdrawn, and in another group only one patient withdrawn, so this will be severely affect the results that we are going to obtain from this trial data. Next, reporting bias. Systematic differences between reported and unreported findings. So as we discussed, there could be definitely impact of unreported data. If you see, there is a publication bias assessment which we can do through Cornell plot Sagar test. So that will give you some information. There is a lack of negative results, but it is very rare finding whether the results are actually unreported in those published papers, or there is no actual study was conducted. So these things can be handled by writing a proper protocol, by going back to the protocols and cross-checking them, or case CSRs, or even regulatory reports, or even contacting the study investigators, sometimes referring to the IPDs. So these things will give us the proper picture of what are the outcomes, and what they were measured, and how they were measured, why they did not include in the published papers. So as we said, we are going to discuss, we are going to capture data mostly from the journal articles, and we are going to ignore, or we are as we don't have access to the CSRs, IPDs. So these kind of issues will definitely have impact on reporting bias. So these things will be addressed soon. Maybe within 2-3 months, we are going to come with that RobMeet tool. So I think you can have a look at what kind of items that we are going to keep in that, and what are the responses, and how we are going to see the shape of the systematic reviews, and the way that we are going to conduct. So I think another 2-3 months. So the differences between risk of bias 1 and risk of bias 2. So these biases we have already discussed. So ROB 2 comprised of random sequence generation as well as allocation concealment. So this is not going to deal these two things as separate. This is going to deal these things as in a single item. So performance bias, the difference here is blinding of participants and personnel, as we discussed, but here bias due to deviation from the intended interventions. So the definition and the way that we are going to see, we are going to assess the quality, assess the risk of bias is different, because these steps we are going to take or have been discussing with all the methodologists, statistician, and epidemiologists. So there is intense discussion is going on between the performance bias, even attrition bias, and reporting bias. Next, in ROB 1, you are not going to see if there is any outcome. Outcome is any judgment. This study is high quality or low quality, but here you are going to see the overall bias, whether it is high quality or low quality, or unclear bias. So next, Newcastle-Ottawa quality assessment scales. So this scale is going to deal with the quality in the observational studies. So this comprises of three elements majorly, and the total score will be 9, sometimes 10 for cross-section studies. For selection, this is going to deal with selection of cases, selection of controls, how they are going to how they are going to capture, and definition of the controls, and representativeness of the cases, Next, the comparability when it comes to how the cases and controls were compared, whether there is any adjustments adjusted for age and gender or adjusted for other modifiable factors like confounders. So those things going to be seen in comparability. So generally the two items which are in comparability going to get 2 points, but in selection as well as exposure or outcome, they're going to get only 1 for each and every item that were placed in that scale. Next, exposure. So ascertainment of exposure, how that exposure was recorded, and how how well it was drawn from the was measured in that particular study that can be mentioned in this observation studies. So I'm going to discuss this one scale for cohort study. I'm going to demonstrate now. So I'm stopping here now. So this is a study, Mubanga 2017. I have selected for assessing the quality using a Newcastle-Ottawa scale. So when I did quality assessment, I got score 8. So which is actually high quality. If you look at the rating for that scale, if that is between 7 to 9, that is high quality. So now it is meeting the quality of high. The selection, the representativeness of the exposed cohort, truly representative of the average population of the in the community. So if you read the paper, they have mentioned this is a national cohort of all Swedish patients around their age also they have mentioned, and it is also saying that somewhat representativeness of the twin population. And the selection of the non-exposed cohort means the control groups. This is also drawn from the same population. So it is for that it is getting another point here. So this star mark going to represent whether this in this item where we are going to get the points. Ascertainment of exposure. So there is a surgical records. So MRD would be there. So they are going to capture that information from this. So that is why this is getting 1 point here. Demonstration of the outcome of interest was not present at the start of the study. Yes, these patients, these participants included are not having any outcome of interest in the initial stage. Next, comparability. So they are adjusted for gender here. So that is why they are getting 1. Next, study controls for any additional variables here. Yes, it is going to be considered for matter status, presence of children in the home, population density, area of the residence, and region as well. So here we are going to get 2 models. Model 1 is adjusted for sex, and model 2 adjusted for all these variables. So this information will be definitely helpful for us in assessing the quality. Next, outcome. So outcome is death data from the death register. So there is a record linkage. This is this information saying that the outcome is death, and this is how we are going to capture this from the paper. So this is getting 1 point here, 1 point there. And next was the follow-up was long enough. As it is a cohort study, if a cohort study conducted for only 3 months or 4 months, so it can be marked down because it depends on the outcome. But majorly, if you are going to conduct a cohort study, definitely you have to conduct it for 1 to almost even sometimes even 20 to 30 years. So here this study was conducted for almost 12 years. So this means this is a very well conducted, so that is why it is getting 1 point. So now I'm going to take you to the PDF of this paper. If you see here, the population is all Swedish patients, Swedish residents aged 40 to 80. And if you see from when the study was conducted and who are eligible patients. Next, the controls, Swedish twin register. So again, which is from a longitudinal study which is conducted recently and who were born after 1886. So this information we captured for controls. So the patients and cases and controls were sorted out here. Next, coming to the whom they are going to exclude. So individuals with inpatient visits. So they have mentioned whom they are not going to take. Next, the exposed of the interest. So here they have clearly mentioned statutory requirements that every dog in the Sweden has a unique identifier. So they have clearly mentioned what is the exposure here. Next, outcome. So in the outcome section, we have seen death. So death data from the death register. So here we highlighted that. Next, the reason for the death. So in that death register consists of what is the reason, and they coded it in ICD. So as we mentioned, there is a sex adjusted as well as multivariable adjusted model. In the result section, you can see the highest quintiles. Yes, crude and adjusted models here for acute myocardial infarction and ischemic scream, ischemic stroke, heart failure, all-cause mortality. So this data we are going to capture in our data extraction form, but as we are going to assess the quality here, we are going to get the high quality data because it is adjusted for multiple variables. If you see the two is composed of adjusted for sex, marital status, presence of children in the home. So as this data we have captured there, it is also mentioned in the method section. So as this got 8, it is a high quality study. Yeah, I think yes, I'm done with explaining the quality assessment of cohort study now. So you can see the rating. If that is between 4 to 6, high risk. If that is only 0 to 3, very high risk of bias. Dr. Krishna.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm done with this data extraction as well as quality assessment demonstration.
Thank you.
If there are any...
Thank you, Raju. Thank you so much. So hope all the participants know it is very clear. Raju, can you please mute us speaker? There is an echo. Yeah. But still I can see.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but my voice also I'm hearing back. It's okay. That's fine. So hope I think it's very clear for all the participants. So today afternoon, no, we have discussed two important aspects. One is mainly how to extract the data, and another one is how to assess the quality of the studies. So after the literature search, as I mentioned, we need to go through all the articles completely, starting from title to references. And while reading the article itself, while extracting the data itself, we can also conduct the quality assessment. So we no need to read the article once again only specifically for the quality assessment. While reading and while extracting the data, we can do that by using various scales. And once again, it is completely based on the study design what we are going to be include. So Mr. Raju explained very clearly about all the tools are available. Various tools are available for extracting the data as well as quality assessment based on the study design. For RCTs, we have different scales, and observation studies, we have different scales. Even for case report, case series, we have different scales for assessing the quality. So each and every study design, they're going to have their own scales for assessing the quality. And certainly we need to use those scales for assessing the quality, and then we can mention them in the studies. And Mr. Raju, I think there is one question from the participants. You already explained that. Maybe you can explain one more time that once you assess a quality, if you feel the studies are having a very low quality, so that can be the reason for excluding the study. You already mentioned, maybe you can stress upon this once again.
Yeah, whenever we identified particular study as a low quality, but there are two schools of thoughts. Some researchers are excluding those studies, and some are saying no, we have to include that study, and we have to do a sensitivity analysis of that study by excluding that study from the analysis and see what kind of impact is there on the effect estimate that we are going to obtain in the meta-analysis. But I think doing that would be the better thing, because sometimes it adds the power to the meta-analysis as well.
Always, even we believe that once you assess a quality, the quality assessment is only meant for mentioning in the systematic review. But based on the quality, there is no necessity that you need to exclude the studies or include the studies. What maybe you can do is once you include the studies of all the quality and do the meta-analysis, and maybe you can also go for a subgroup analysis where you can have a separate analysis only for the high quality studies and a separate analysis only for the low quality studies, and then see is there any significant difference between low quality studies to high quality studies based on the information what we're getting out of it. So you can do that, and then maybe you can explain that same thing in the meta-analysis and systematic review article. You would like to add any other things, Raju?
Yeah, we need to discuss these things in the discussion section in detail. If we are including more low quality studies, so we have to inform that in the limitation section. So these many percentage of the studies are with the low quality, but still we have included, because this is if the research area is very narrow and the studies are very when there is less number of studies are there, and if you exclude 4 to 5 studies and there are only 7 studies and 5 studies got excluded because of the low quality, so I think that won't make any sense. But you have to include the study and describe that in the discussion section. However, these studies are having low quality. We analyze this, and this is the impact that these are going to have on the effect estimate, the outcomes. So these things would be beneficial for the readers as well. So there is data, but that is not that much high quality.
Exactly. So maybe that's what we can see in the Cochrane reviews.
Yes.
They will include all the studies, and finally what they say is we got this outcome from the studies which are having the low quality. So at present we cannot trust the results. So we cannot say any conclusion based on these studies, because whatever the studies we have included, they're having the very low quality. And certainly we may require further studies which are having high quality to come out with any conclusion. So they will clearly mention, may not be in all systematic reviews, but in case of Cochrane systematic reviews, you can clearly see those kind of statements from the authors saying that we cannot take any conclusion based on the quality of the studies. So you can try to understand that. One more last question, Raju. I think somewhere you mentioned about the inversion of existing data. So there was one question: when do actually need to do inversion of existing data?
Yes, I'll explain them very clearly. So you are going to look at the data from highest versus lowest. Means well, I'll give you one example. Milk intake of 2 glasses per day versus never milk intake. Okay, all 5 studies mentioned data for high versus low, means no never intake versus higher intake. And the events for I think cardiovascular events, you can see a stroke. The number of events in the never intake group 16 and the sample size is 20. And milk intake, higher milk intake, 2 glasses per day is having 2 events per 15 participants. So you're going to obtain one odds ratio there, right? So this is going to be happen for all the 5 studies, but in a 6th study, the data reported was in a different way. So there, the odds ratio that you have to invert by doing it 1 by the odds ratio whatever you obtain there, 0.63.
Okay.
If not, there are quartiles.
Yeah. Thank you, Raju. I think thank you for that answer. I think that's about the questions from the audience, and they were asking, even you mentioned there are tools for data extraction. So they were asking, is there any possibility for demonstration? But I mentioned, I think this will not be the right time to demonstrate those tools, but certainly they can learn on their own whenever they find any tool like that. But I personally feel maybe even though tools are available, certainly we need to apply our own mind there, because finally we need to evaluate the data and we need to analyze the data. So we should know what we require, even though there is a tool, but certainly we need to apply, I think, some of the concepts from our side, and then maybe we can get a good amount of data.
Yes, even those tools are paid versions, so we have to get monthly subscription for that.
Yeah, exactly.
There are live webinars for that to learn or to get exposed to those tools. Like Distler is providing some videos. Even you can find those in YouTube. And there are some sessions conducted by even IQVIA recently. So if they attend those sessions, so they can get some idea how to capture data in Distler itself.
Exactly. So they can learn, I think, maybe after getting the basic information from this, they can learn on their own many other concepts of data extraction and quality assessment.
Yeah, I think explaining these two things in 1 hour could be very tough.
Exactly. So at least I'm hopeful that they got some understanding, the basics. Yeah. So if they go on this, maybe they can learn many other aspects. So certainly there is a huge amount of literature already available, and I think it depends upon them how they will take it up further.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Raju. Thank you for joining with us from Australia. I know it's not the right time for you. It's already late night. Thank you so much for joining with us, even though you are in the late night stage. I'm sure this whatever your presence is here, especially about the data extraction quality assessment, I'm sure it is certainly useful for the participants to take it up further, and maybe they can in future they can do some systematic reviews and meta-analysis by using these concepts. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
So the audience, thank you so much for being with us from the day